Hello and welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur. I am an EO member and elected president of EOS Michigan coming up in this upcoming year. Super excited about that. Just wrote a book called Leading Winning Teams right over here with Wiley Publishing. Super excited about that book launching last August. That continues to sell in stores and all sorts of different medias. Super excited. Probably most people do know me though, because I spent over 13 years in professional baseball coaching in 3 World Series. And today on the Winners Find a Way show, I welcome Derek Johnson, CEO of Derek Johnson Nutrition. What's up, buddy?
What is happening? Happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Man, I'm excited to have you, Derek. Derek's a good friend of mine. We go a little bit back. We got a fellow acquaintance that introduced us, a guy I've done some work with, and happens to be Derek's brother-in-law, it turns out. So that was, I didn't know that for a while. And so that was pretty cool to learn. Derek is married, 17 years, 2 kids, 14, 12, chasing those travel sports, man, like crazy, like the rest of us. A Bachelor's of Science at Cal State Chico as a dietetics guy. So this is interesting because, man, the nutrition has just taken off. And, man, we talk about this a lot as a guy who's coached a lot of pro athletes and myself always training. I always use the words, you can't outwork a bad diet, right? Like all the workouts in the world, the diet just goes to garbage. No gain or stay the same. A lot of times just playing for an even, right?
It's true. I mean, I think we all got away with a lot when we were younger. So we think we're 18, 22, 24, 25. Then the body starts changing, right? We all have metabolic decades. The first big one's around 30, hit another one around 40. I am just turned 51 and, I feel awesome, but I got to work hard. And we all sort of, take things for granted. And then I remember people starting to reach out to me that were friends, family, etc. when they start kind of getting into the 40s, and they're like, dude, or, what's going on? Both men and women, but a lot of friends. And unfortunately, in the way we approach things, we're a very reactive society, which is what you don't want to be. We wait for something to happen. And then we want to change and go back in time and peel the onion back and have a crystal ball and what happened, rather than being proactive, which we'll talk about the difference between my traditional training in dietetics and then, over the last 20 years being in what's now called sort of integrative medicine and integrative nutrition. So that we're treating causation of what's going on or staying ahead of these things versus chasing symptoms and being symptom chasers, which is, no way to live. But unfortunately, that's sort of the design of how things are run here, which is probably one of the bigger reasons we rank 69th in the world in health.
Yeah, right. It's not, and everyone thinks like, oh man, it's a first world country. You guys should be right there, top 3, top 4, right? No issues. I mean, I think people are really coming to grips with the discovery of how many of our foods are approved by the FDA now that nobody in Europe approves. Like there's like all these banned products that problem in the United States. And it's like, holy cow. Like,
well, they're made here.
Yeah.
We make the bad foods. We make the Doritos and the Mountain Dews of the world and things like that. But the other countries just say, here's our list.
Yeah.
You can put these in there. Now, nothing political here, but there are people, all of my friends, colleagues, doctors, acupuncturists, doesn't matter. Anyone I've learned in the 26 years I've been doing this are very excited about, RFK coming in just to be like, he's already doing things like, no, we're not putting that in our food. We're not putting that in our baby formula. We're not like, let's do what a lot of other countries have so we don't have a lot of these underlying issues. And certainly the scope of what I do is we'll talk about today, but the food, to your point, right? I mean, so many people have traveled across the world and were like, well, I ate this here. I ate the pasta in Italy and I felt okay. I didn't feel like I had a gut bomb and I wanted to take a nap or it hurt my stomach or whatever it might be. And I had a fruit or vegetable over in, France or wherever they were. And they're like, oh my, because the body has receptors, right? Super interesting. Let me give you an example. First one that comes to my mind, tomato. So everyone's been stuck in an airport. You have a salad, you eat a tomato, and you go, I think it's a tomato. It looks like a tomato, but it doesn't really. It kind of tastes like a tomato. And then you've had a tomato where you almost feel like you could eat it like an apple. You're just like,
Yeah.
it is insane. The body knows it's very in tune with what is food and what is not food. But here we just use so many, for lack of a better word, trickery and tricking the body to think things are food with artificial sweeteners and processors and fillers and all the things we put in our foods, which create addiction. And then people can get off the food, right? So I appreciate the evil science of addiction in food, because you're just like, how did they figure that out?
Yeah.
But man, until we make change, people aren't looking at that. So I think that's a big problem. And then we'll talk about another one that I kind of came up with this phrase. We've literally lost the art of being human.
I love this, man. Like, first of all, I'm so excited about diving into all this because, as a health guy, like, this drives me crazy, right?
Yeah.
And also I've been training these high world-class athletes for years, and I'm like trying to put like great food in you. Like, I'm always looking at them like, hey, you're a Porsche. You got to put the most highest octane fuel. Think of yourself like a race car, right? We're not putting like, oh, hey, E85 in. Like, the race car doesn't go great on E85, right? And
Right.
and the race car's got a team of 12 mechanics around and a pit crew, and it's amazing the attention that's all getting. And pro athletes have to think about their body like that. And then they're like going, I don't know, man. I just did some Wendy's and some McDonald's, and it's like,
Yeah, and that's
what are you
more
talking
like
about, bro? Like, so yeah, I cannot wait.
Diesel into an unleaded.
Yeah, exactly. I cannot wait to get in this. First of all, shout out to you, Derek. I mean, 51-year-old, you look 31. So first of all, you're repping your company and brand really well because, hey, listen, you're a guy who's talking about health and nutrition. You want to look the part, right?
Yeah, you got to practice what you preach. My program is not a calorie counting, eat salads, exercise, count your macros, lose 5. The body is a biochemistry set. It's not a bank account, right?
Yeah.
And it's really important. I stole that line, by the way, from a good friend of mine, JJ Virgin. So I have to give her props.
Nice. Props, JJ.
And so it's so true, right? And we have to understand, like, even with weight loss, no one knows where this one came from, but you have to be healthy to lose weight, not lose weight to be healthy, right? And we'll get into that about something I call being metabolically flexible. But it's so true in terms of what we think we're putting in. I think that the gasoline thing is a great one, and that's why I kind of go as far as say you're not even putting in like the lower version of the unleaded. If you're at the gas station, we're actually putting in the wrong fuel where the body's not functioning. So
yeah,
the amount of clients and patients that are referred to me with underlying digestive issues, sleep issues, energy issues, pain issues, probably the top 4 things that people see their physician or their practitioners with when they're not actually looking at they've lost the art of being human. We'll talk today about 3 areas, right? How you start your day, what you do during the day in terms of consistency, and how I like to say, mastering your morning and mastering your evening. And they wonder why they don't feel great. And they're like, I'm taking supplements. I think I'm eating right. And, you read this, and I'll give a good book recommendation as well to people get started. I'm still working on my book, so they can't read that yet. However, what I think the big takeaway from today too is when we give people these wonderful, I call non-negotiable tips, is to keep it simple and don't overwhelm yourself and try and do 8, 9, 10 things at a time. Right. I think 3 is great.
Yeah. And simple is effective, right? Like simple. And by the way, as always on this show, man, I must say this twice a month on my show, right? And we only do a show a week. Simple doesn't mean easy. And I just want to let people know that but we're trying to keep it simple. So, because we can do these things and stay focused and get this when it's simple. Don't convolute it. Don't challenge it. When I think about, not only that fuel, I also think about like, there's a lot of high end folks that are coming to guys like you and I, people like you and I, and these are the high end mechanics, right? Like this is the race car mechanic that you're going to need to compete on that track week in, week out. And I think people are trusting their body to the 17-year-old oil change guy on the corner. Like, hey, I do this on the side. I only got to do these 3 things and I do that. And they're good at that job, right? Like, that's awesome. But like, this is a pretty convoluted and complex deal, and trusting that to anybody may be an error. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, right? And sometimes the people who they are working with have good intentions.
Of
So
course.
if I take Derek in 1999, first starting out, learning and telling people what I learned in school, I was that 17-year-old mechanic, or
Yeah, sure.
I was doing what I thought I knew, and meanwhile suffering with a lot of, if we have time today to go in some of the health consequences that I had because of that, without knowing. I just thought I was doing everything correct, and until I was introduced into what we didn't call it back then, 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, functional medicine or functional
Yeah.
nutrition, or integrative medicine, or integrative nutrition. They're fairly synonymous. I didn't know, right? And it wasn't until I, met some people that were like, "Hey, you need to do these labs. Hey, did you know this is going on?" And I'm like, I didn't learn any of this in school, and it sounds amazing. Like, I'm in, right? And that was a huge pivot in my career. But you're absolutely right. I mean, people are, unfortunately, right, if they're blessed to find someone to help coach them in all the great things that you do, they succeed. We all need coaches. My job outside of getting people into a program is very much probably like you, is creating a team, and been like, I know what hats I wear. I know what I'm really good at. And I stick with those hats. There's not a lot of them, right, that I wear. I don't go outside those barriers, for what I'm qualified to do, and for what I'm passionate about. And if someone does need something else, I've, been blessed to work with some of the best practitioners, right? I was brick and mortar in an integrative medicine practice for over 20 years, working with some of the most brilliant people on the planet.
Mhm.
And it was easy for me to be like, oh, have a consult. We do something together. So I'm dangerous enough in those areas. I know enough about it, especially things that I've been through, and other family members. But you have to just stick to what you're good at in your craft. And then if you're not, hopefully that person has people surrounding them that are good, right? Because it's one of the things, even in my space, when someone's like, I do everything, I'm like, really? I
Yeah.
don't I don't think that's healthy,
Yeah.
right? Pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell people where they can find you real quick. Tell if they're reaching out, where do they find Derek Johnson?
That's easy. My website is super easy. It's D as in Derek, J as in Johnson, N as nutrition. So djn.health, and not .com. And you just go on there. There's a little button. If you scroll down, you just click 20-minute free discovery Zoom. I'm offering that, based on what we're doing today. If they want to, I want to learn more about them. Let me just take 10 seconds and talk about that. Why do I do that? Why do I take that? Well, I've just chosen with my program as I've gotten older, is I like to work with less people more frequently to really help them. And I want to hear their story. They fill out a form, takes about 5 minutes. And I want to make sure I'm the right person. And I do get people with a lot of underlying things. They've tried everything. And I go, you know what? I'm not the right person for you to start with. You need to work with this person. Most of the time, they need help with the nutrition, and they need help with gut health and energy levels and sleep. But I do that because I want to make sure I'm the right fit. I don't just not so like a all in, click my link, pay. I really want to hear their story. And I think some of my friends and colleagues are like, I can't believe you still do that. But I'm like, I want to get to know them and make sure it's the right fit. So yeah, they can sign up there. I have promised starting in June of this year on my Derek Johnson Nutrition Instagram that I will get active again. What people will probably learn about me today is, like, I'm a nerd. I love the data. I love talking with my docs. I love figuring out things. I think of everyone as a puzzle. Some people are 5,000 piece puzzles. I do get those, but most people are in that 1,000 to 500 space. And we want to put them into a kitty puzzle where they're just
Yeah, I
small
think
pieces that move around.
I'd like to be the kitty puzzle. I'd like to have like 12 pieces, man. Like
Just like,
where,
oh,
I could get figured out.
we're good, right? So
Yeah.
that's the idea, is getting, that's my analogy. I haven't heard that one before, but that's definitely how I view people, including myself, right? And if I don't stay ahead of things, then my puzzle that might have been 100 pieces or 50 pieces, right, or with the analogy here, it could easily get to 500 or 1,000 if you don't stay on top of it, if we take things for
Yeah.
granted, right? And people do, and then they kind of look back, and like we started our discussion with earlier today, what happened? I want to be anybody. I want to go back in time. And it's like, well, no, we got to stay ahead of the curve. Don't be reactive, be proactive.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So Derek Johnson, a couple different things about you. You've got your facility in West LA. You've been heavy into telehealth. I mean, obviously there's a lot that moved that way, COVID and post-COVID. So that's been an absolute game changer for the health environment, which is incredible. I think you see where Kennedy just brought a whole nother light, Senator Kennedy, to our health and what we're thinking. I'm always shocked by hearing people tell me like, "Oh man, I got major gluten injury issues," but
Yeah.
I just 2 weeks in Europe and had no issue at all eating
Yeah.
anything, and I'm like, man, there's got to be something to that, right? Like, how are we? And here's another question for you, Derek. Like, we have degrees here for food science
Yeah.
in the United States. Like, should we have a food science degree? Do we need to learn how to grow potatoes the size of your head? Like, I don't know if this is necessary. Like,
Well,
we've
yeah.
gone away from like what maybe we should really be focused on. And of course, the crazy thing is that now the stuff that's best for us that does
Mhm.
not contain any of the chemicals that's being very protected is the most expensive stuff in the world now. I mean, they call it Whole Foods, but everyone calls it Whole Paycheck, man, because you go in there and you just drop mad cash to eat better. But it's preventative. I mean, that is a massive savings on the downside of health issues. Is that fair?
That's fair. So a few points. First, I'd like to back up and say the main thing, I don't have the exact data in front of me, but we're about 25 years
Okay.
before we lose our soil.
Yeah.
So to
Wow.
answer your question, if we don't get back to regenerative farming, we're toast. No pun intended.
Yeah.
We're gluten-free toast.
Yeah.
And so this is why when you go to other countries and you taste other fruits and vegetables and things like that, you're like, oh my gosh. Like we were in Costa Rica we were to my brother-in-law a couple of years ago, right? And we found this place just serving grass-fed beef. The cows are just eating grass. They're just doing what
Yeah.
they're supposed to do,
Yeah.
right? I'm in Costa Rica, right? I mean, just like ridiculous, right? Even a lot of the food from the farm was amazing. So we've gotten away from regenerative farming, right? We're all into processed foods and added. I think the average American is around 71% processed foods, if I remember correctly. That statistic moves. Usually, it's moving in the wrong direction.
And I got to
Um,
say, real quick on that, the thing about processed foods that scares the snot out of me, I've seen a couple times where my kids drop some processed thing they
yeah,
brought from a travel game, right? And they drop it in our garage, and 3 days later, the bugs won't touch it, right? Like it's totally fine, and there's no actual animals, bugs, anything going to it because they know it's not actually
right.
valid.
I
Like
did
it's
this
crazy.
my kids when they were they were toddlers. I don't remember the age. Where we took margarine, like
Yeah,
let's not use any whatever fake butter, and
yeah,
then you take real butter, like grass-fed butter,
yeah.
which by the way everyone uses throughout the world. It does not cause heart disease. It's a myth. And you put them outside in a little jar, then you go back in 24 hours and you're like, all the bugs are in the butter and they're not in there, right? You could do that with multitudes of
Yeah.
food. Another one I did, which probably wasn't the best dad move, is one of my kids came home from a birthday party with like Cheetos, the spicy, what I forget the name of the Cheeto,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, oh, watch this. I took a lighter. It's like a little torch.
Oh, you're kidding.
Lights on fire. I was like, since when in nature is food to be? And let me be clear, like my kids get a lot of flexibility. I
Yeah.
want them to explore, right? Especially after, I have a son that was sick for 7.5 years. He's 12 now, but it took us almost 8 years to get him right. That's a whole separate story. So I feel people's pain. I've been through it. But I want them to explore it and be a normal kid, but at least they know the difference
Yeah.
between real food and fake food. And I want them to go to a party and I want them just to be a kid. Like, I'm not that dad. I'm not
Yeah.
that that has red for it. Like, I get it. Like, still have it. Like, I don't care. When I go out to eat, we were just on spring break, right? When I go to a restaurant, I'm not that guy. It's like, what'd you fry those French fries in? Like, whatever.
What oil are you
know
using?
they're in seed oils, right? But I'm with my family. I'm eating French fries. Like, I'm that guy,
Yeah.
right? And so you have to have a balance, right? People do say 80-20, 90-10. I think 80-20 is probably fair.
Yeah.
And if you become metabolically flexible, you do all the right things when you want. Like on spring break, like I was eating and doing things I never do because most of the time I've created metabolically flexibility with my sleep, my digestion, my energy, and how my body functions. So when I put something inflammatory, right, because that's what foods do, they either heal or they steal. You choose. That's all.
Wow.
Just make it really simple, right? Are you putting something that's healing, that's creating, right, healing properties and energy the body recognizes, back to the tomato analogy, or are you putting foods that steal, create inflammation and steal energy? But when you're mostly 80+% of the time a healing person and you have a weekend like I did, going to theme parks and escape rooms and dinners out, having a blast, having a couple drinks with the dads, of course.
Do you feel lousy? Like when you eat like 2 elephant ears at the park, do you feel
What I
lousy?
don't do is I don't eat that stuff. I do have a gluten sensitivity, like a lot of people that are unaware of it, but I try and follow, like I'm pretty gosh darn strict with my nutrition.
Yeah.
There's two, probably shouldn't talk about this, but it's true, so we have to talk about it. There's food hangovers and there's alcohol hangovers.
Sure.
If you get both, it's like
Oh man.
worst.
Yeah.
So I'm really good, like, because we did have a few drinks and we had fun and we're on vacation and whatever. But I'm really strict. I carry my protein bars and I carry my supplements. And so, do I when I came home, did I feel like I needed to do a bone broth cleanse, which I did? Yeah, because I had fun. But within 48 hours,
What do you call your cleanse? What do you call it?
Oh, I have several, but the one that I typically do on extended fast, which we can talk about, and everyone has to be careful with fasting. Don't just start fasting.
Right.
It's actually called time restricted eating, but we'll call it intermittent fasting because everyone likes to call it that. I just did a 24-hour bone broth fast when I came home.
24-hour brumba?
Bone broth.
Bone broth.
Yeah, I just feel like the little Yeti right here.
Yeah.
And when it's time for me to eat and when I'm getting hungry, I just sip on the bone broth. And I do that from,
Is it like warm or is it on ice?
Oh, you got it. If it's cold, it's disgusting.
I can't think warm is that great, by the way. You're talking
It's
about
like
bone
a tea.
broth.
No, it's good. Like Kettle and Fire, no association. They have a great one you get on Amazon.
Okay.
I keep that in the cupboard because I don't have to always get the fresh stuff. It's a great bone broth. And then I just had that, so we finished on Sunday night, probably about 7-ish, coming back from my son's soccer game on spring break that we made. And then I didn't eat until 7 o'clock Monday night. So it's just
24-hour.
Just like a reset, right?
Yeah.
I do
a reset.
All right. It's a good reset. And then next day I was like back in action, feeling great and been crushing this week. And I got another soccer tournament, this weekend and that we're driving to and cheer after that with my daughter. It's like nonstop. So I just think it's important for people to know it's not about perfection, calorie counting and staying in this little box of but a lot of people feel like they have to be so good to feel better because there's no flexibility, right? So at some point too, I think it's important to talk about labs and understanding the differences because so many people go in and they think they're complaining about sleep, energy, digestion, inflammation, whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
And they go into their allopathic PCP doctor, not the doctor's fault. This is the system. A lot of allopathic friends that are physicians. Yeah. And they get the I'm not dying test. And it might say that they have low vitamin D and high cholesterol, like typical.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, everything looks good. And you're like, but I don't feel good.
Yeah.
So if you don't get an integrative testing, our kits that we work with all of our clients are home kits that give us a lot of information, like 32 pages. And we really got to dig down to get to the root, back to the symptoms of what's going on, right? So again, I'm just with the physicians and doctors and people I work with and the stuff that we're able to do, especially in the longevity piece of this, is so great. And so we can see and heal the body, get it back because the body wants to heal. We just have to give it those healing foods, not too many stealing foods. And then you create metabolic flexibility. So when you push the envelope and you go out and you eat cheesecake or someone wants to have a drink or someone wants to, have fast food when my kids still love things like In-N-Out or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Just have it. And if they're fine with it, your body's like, okay, it's probably not the best thing for me, but at least it's fun. But most of the time you're doing great. But most people don't have the flexibility. So every time they break a quote unquote rule, they feel the complicated. So that's a long-winded answer. Did I feel fine? Yes. Did I feel back from 80% to 100% within about, 24, 36 hours? Absolutely. Still got my
Yeah.
workout in, still felt great. Because I pressed the envelope and the rules, but I also wasn't just like letting loose 24/7, like eating this, drinking that, eating this, drinking that, and just, feeling like a blob the whole time because I got to keep up with two teenagers.
Well, I think one of the things that people should know about you, you're a disciplined guy. Like you're not like, oh, hey, I'll just do, you not only believe in this stuff, right? You're living it, and it shows, right? It shows as you look as a 31-year-old here at 51. So
Very
that's a factor. Um, one thing most people don't know about you is you were a nutritionist on The Biggest Loser.
So I did work on originally with the show and the contestants, did some old, some films and stuff like that at the ranch. My main job, I was the director of nutrition at that time. We had 4 resorts throughout the United States. So I was in
Mhm.
charge of education, creating all the PowerPoints for our guests. Our average guest stay was 2.5 weeks or 2 weeks rather, I believe. It's
Mhm.
been a bit. And then it was more of a lifestyle piece where the show was a game show. I
Yeah.
think if anyone just realizes that. Although I still keep in contact with several of the contestants that have kept the weight off, but the rebound effect on most people, right, as you might imagine, was not great. Um, so I love the resorts piece of it because it was really about, hey, you're here for 2 weeks. We're going to change lifestyle. We're going to teach you. We're not just going to have you work out 9 hours a day, feed you 1,000 calories, get your results, send you home, and then we want you back because you gained the weight.
Yeah.
It's really, and a big piece, which people don't talk about enough, was psychology. We had therapists on staff and people really helping them through because most people, probably a lot of people listening to this podcast, they actually have a poor relationship with food based on
Yeah.
how they were brought up, probably in miscommunication. And most people just don't know. It was all unintentional.
Yeah.
So we focus a lot on the, which I do as well, is relationship with food, which is why I'm like that with my kids. I want them to have a healthy relationship, but they need to have a fun relationship too.
It's one
Um,
of those things. Let's talk about that for a second because that's a huge thing. I see a lot of folks. It's one of the toughest things to have a bad relationship with. I think like sex and food are a hard thing because as an adult, I always feel like, man, if you got an issue with heroin, you're not walking into the Ace Hardware and getting some, right? Like, but it feels
right.
like, like alcohol, sex, food, like you're doing these things are so prevalent in our environment and they're part of a quote unquote, it should be part of our healthy life,
Mhm.
like food. And then yet we don't really have a healthy role with it, yet it's always here. And so it's like I really felt for that. Like I really felt for, and of course when I was coming up, it felt like a lot of the unhealth was the popular or well-known health was with a lot of young ladies from bulimia to anorexia. That was
Mhm.
really common, a bad relationship. I'm going to cut weight. I'm just not going to eat and either starve themselves or they're, purging and then
Yeah.
puking. Right. And so rough relationship there because you start that out at 18, man, you're still eating at 50, right? You're still eating at 70. The food relationship is not going to, we have
Right.
to adapt that. Right. But man, I really feel for folks in that challenge of that. So I really appreciate the psychology part.
Yeah, it's important. I do refer people. I work with therapists. Um, it's important for people to have that. It's actually fairly common in men. It's not talked about a lot. They have different kind of,
Yeah,
relationship. There are many types of,
aggression eating, right? Like,
yeah, and
yeah,
just,
I see
night
that.
eating and, food is so emotional, right? We just keep it simple here. Like food's so emotional and we will go gravitate towards food. And you're never going to be like, I'm feeling emotional. I'm feeling stressed. There are people like, you're not going to go and like, oh,
Caf-
I'm going to have one of the, I'm just drinking this. I think it's called a Junie. Someone sent them to me. It's like it's a nootropic drink. It's really good. I'm
Yeah,
actually drinking it right now. No affiliation. It's really good. It's got like ashwagandha and theanine in it and no calories, no artificial sweeteners. And they're not going to crave one of those or these things. My kids like Zevias, right? So stevia
yeah,
based. They're going to be like, they're going to want a drink. They're going to want sugar. They're going to want carbs, right? You want that feeling
half gallon ice cream.
when you have that and just been like, oh, this is so good because the food's very emotional. So it doesn't mean we can't go to those things. But back to what I've said several times, if you're not metabolically flexible and you have a bad day where you just binged on carbs, you're then the next day you wake up, right? Because those bacteria in your stomach, right, is a huge part of my practice, right? Is gut health. I'm a very gut health, brain health. Ayurvedic medicine is the oldest medicine on the planet. They've been talking about brain gut health for thousands of years. And because of my history with my gut health and how I got into this, whole thing outside of my traditional training was because of my gut issues. And so when you feed the bad bacteria, the bacteria that become overgrown in the gut, those carby foods, I don't care if it's, pasta, it's ice cream or a Slurpee or whatever someone's drinking, right? There's communication with the brain and the gut. And then they want more of those foods. And so it's not a question when people are like, I can't get control of this. It's because it's not a question of if you're going to overeat on those foods, it's when, because they're extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And then when you take emotion into that, stress, the lifestyle, right? I mean, I say this to people all the time in my discovery Zooms and when I work with them. 99% of the people I work with, including me, and I know you, and pretty much everyone, right? There's always that 1% that, I know you work with the 1%, but the 1% of people that are like, wow, this is amazing. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
We lead a lifestyle. This is super important. We lead a lifestyle the human body is not designed to lead. Back to where I've said earlier in the very beginning, we've lost the art of being human. We're running at a pace of life. We don't live in a blue zone. There were more than 5. The book was great. Netflixing was great. But I should say everything on Netflix is not true in my industry. But
Right.
it drives me crazy. I was like, where did you get this data and research from? But we live you just go to a blue zone. You go to Italy, you go to France, you go to Greece, or wherever you go. I just took a siesta, then I went to my garden, and then I made some food, and I sat down and I ate for 45 minutes to 2 hours, right? We're just like running around with our heads cut off and eating that 70+% processed foods. And we wonder why we rank where we rank. So
yeah, in 7 minutes or less, right? Because we got to get to something.
You got to get to something, right? And that's I'll get another one. I used to, this thing from one of the companies I'm associated with on the Scientific Advisory Board, the owner, this was 20 years ago. She used to call them clinical pearls. So I still keep this little thing called clinical pearls. Clinical pearl is, so we have 2 states to make the nervous system very simple. You talk about this, right? We have sympathetic, fist, fight, flight. Everybody learned that in high school at some point or college. And then you have parasympathetic, rest, digest. So think about why they call parasympathetic rest, digest. And this is to your 7 minutes, which I agree. Sometimes it's 2 minutes or worse. So in the United States, we are the worst. I would agree with it. Again, this is my opinion. There's 2 types of eating. Primary eating, this goes back to relationship with food, and secondary eating. Primary eating is you're sitting down, you're chewing your food, you're conversating like you and I. We could even be over just Zoom and having a meal and laughing and talking for 45 minutes. We're very poor at doing that. We're primary eating, especially people that have kids and jobs and running around. And we're eating in sympathetic state, fight, flight. You're not eating in rest, digest when the digestion tract is optimized. Now, are there things that I take like digestive enzymes and stuff like that to cheat, hack, right? Is a popular word? Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's important that, we're running in the state, we're eating very quickly, and then we just want the body to digest the food, even if it was a healthy meal. And expect the body to not just digest and assimilate the food, but most importantly, absorb those nutrients. So it's a big problem. We drink too many fluids, we drown our food, and we eat too quickly, and certainly in the relationship with food. And again, this isn't about perfection, and I don't want people being like, oh my gosh, Derek said all these things that I'm doing. Basics. Like I'm going to give people a few basics here today that just where breathe, focus on a couple things. Know that the average, I believe the latest, this is an old study. There's probably newer ones, but at least this was back actually in my Biggest Loser days from this Farah lady. She was amazing. She was doing her PhD at the resort. And she said, Derek, did you know that the only published research in creating a habit is 66 days? And I was like, I did not know that. Not 21 days. So it's kind of like, we're in March now. So people had New Year's resolutions, and by like February 12th or whatever, like they were out. Because we don't stick with it long enough to create the neuroplasticity of the brain to create that habit. So it's really important that people give things time and they focus on no more than, I call them wins, no more than 3 wins. Master those wins and move on. And have a team and have a coach and have someone helping you. Otherwise, just like me, people are like, oh, you do it all. I'm like, no, I have my integrative medicine doctor. We trade. I do her nutrition. She does my medical stuff. I have a flexibility coach. I have people around me because if I don't have checking in with them, like I'm not going to stick with it.
It's so important. And I love that. I love that timeline because we do the same thing. When business work, right? We're gonna focus in on the quarters. It's a 90-day cycle, and then we're gonna reset, and then there's gonna be a whole new quarter. And going back to these specialists, right? When I was in sports and people were asking me all these things, they knew I owned some businesses, and athletes are getting money. They want to make investments, and they're like going, "Man, hey, what kind of investments should I be making?" And I'm like, man, I'm not a wealth manager, man. Like I take brands and I help build them up and grow, and I know how to scale those things. But I'm not a certified financial planner. We have to go look for those specialties and know which lane we should be in. And I want to talk a little bit about, that was a really valuable lesson for me to not be every man to everybody.
Right.
As a young man, like let's come back though to our young selves, right? We talked about, I want to hear your big mistakes. We talk about on Winners Find a Way. Winners, when shown data that they're losing, find a way to win from the 4 disciplines of execution. I love that. One of the things that I did as a young self was I was training, right? I was training like a madman. I had great coaches around me who knew exactly how to get me stronger. Now, what I didn't know, because nobody knew it then, was some of the training I was doing was very detrimental to my rotator cuff, to my shoulders, because I was overtraining. I'm playing both baseball and tennis at the Division I level. So I am constantly getting rotational stress and strain. And then I'm behind neck pressing 170 pounds doing, reps of fives, and I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, I look back on that now and just thinking detrimental, but nobody knew it. So
Right.
I was just getting stronger, constantly overload progression, right? Overload progression constantly, and to get stronger, be better. Let's talk about young Derek, because you come out, you're a smart dude. You're practicing all these things, but you're the dietetics guy, and you're not feeling great. So
Yeah.
walk us through some of that.
So one of the bigger catalysts, right, without going too deep, was when I was in high school. I think, like a lot of people, I don't think my anxiety really was too noticeable, but there were certain things that were. But I just felt like my stomach never felt great. But I got through it, just power through it. You talk to your doctor and like, it's normal.
And
I'm like,
you thought at that time it was nerves.
I was just nerves, or I just like sometimes food agreed, sometimes it didn't agree. It wasn't terrible, but I certainly had times where I and I was a big sports guy playing sports, especially soccer. And then I had acne, and I remember I went on a drug called minocycline for acne. I was like, yeah, I didn't know. My mom didn't know. Dad didn't know. I was like, just take it. So fast forward into college, I'm starting to take my dietetics courses, biology, chemistry, biochemistry, and start learning about like drug nutrient interactions. And I was like, why am I still taking this? Never thought about it. And then you start, and back then it was like fish tape and stuff. The internet was just barely coming out. So I couldn't go to like ChatGPT or Google or something like that.
WebMD.
WebMD, start reading. And you're like, yeah, not good. And on that note, if you look at the literature, even like a simple dose of an antibiotic, like amoxicillin, let's say,
yeah,
right, it takes the gut approximately 2 years to re-inoculate all of the good bacteria just from one dose of an antibiotic.
Wow.
So imagine it. So it was destroying my gut. And then
you and I know folks who live on antibiotics. Like,
well,
it's like every other month.
Doctors aren't telling them to take the right type of probiotic, because all probiotics certainly are not created equal. We can talk about supplements. That's a whole podcast.
Yeah.
And so I, was having all these underlying health issues, and, I still got through college, and, but I never felt great. And then when I first started practicing, I'm like telling people, helping them and healing them. And some days, I don't know if it's hypocritical is the right word, but I just didn't feel good, and I'm working, and then I get home and I'm like, I just crushed a day, but I should be the one feeling amazing in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. And it wasn't until I met a functional medicine doctor. Back then, it wasn't really called functional medicine. It's like, we were shipping our GI tests, our stool tests to Germany. brilliant doctor who's now one of my best friends called Dr. David Brady. Brilliant physician, brilliant just person. And, then we did some other testing that looked at like vitamin nutrient deficiencies and stress markers. These are all the labs that I run on everyone I work with. And they've advanced so much since back then, right? And then they came back and they're like, you have this thing called leaky gut. And I was like, that sounds like I'm going to die. And they're like, no, it's very common. And I had all these nutritional deficiencies and I had a big, wheat sensitivity. Not celiac, just a really heavy, high load. And all these underlying things. And I was like, I didn't learn any of this in school, which, sadly, they're still not teaching today. It's like food guide pyramid and I'm eating whole wheat and milk for strong bones. And, kale's good for you. Also not true. That's another one I can give.
It's a garnish. That's a garnish that all of a sudden became a superfood.
That's really good marketing. You have kale a couple times a week, everybody, it's fine. But if you're putting kale in your smoothie every day, don't do that. And we got the last.
I am putting spinach. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah. Best lettuce you can use is arugula, by the way. But
really,
a sharp taste. Yeah, super high nitric oxide. But they're all great. Rotation is key. And so we got the labs back and changed my diet and took the gluten out and took all these supplements for leaky gut. And then it was just like a fog, just poof, gone. No more stomach problems. And that was the pivot of my career. When I went, I want to know whatever this is. And so I started taking classes. And now you have big organizations like IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine, and A4M, and all these doctors and practitioners and people are taking things. And so that was where my career pivoted. So when I say that I've been doing it for 26 years, it's closer just to slightly over 20 years, because in the beginning, I guess it's closer to 21, where I was just doing what I learned in school and I didn't know any better. But once I met people in the functional medicine space and my eyes were open and it's become so popular now, right? I mean, so much more popular, like great books out there and people out there talking about things and telling you the truth about what you think is true versus what's not true, based on marketing. And that was the pivot. So that's why I'm like so passionate about what I do and helping people, because there's a lot of great information out there. It's becoming more available, but it's still somewhat, can be convoluted, and hidden with a lot of, false things that are out there. And one thing I'll say, it's very important to realize also what I did in my 20s versus I do my 30s versus my 40s and now into my 50s. Changes, because as my body changes and I redo my labs and you learn a lot from one lab versus another lab, but you learn so much more when you can compare them. As your body's changing, your lifestyle changes. You didn't have kids, you got married, you moved, you changed jobs, you're traveling, you want to do a triathlon, whatever the case is. Super important that we stay ahead of things. We look at symptoms, and figure out what's going on, and that's what we did. So it was a big thing. So that's what when I was just losing, I was literally thought I was doing the right things. Certainly I was not doing everything right? You think about college life and I was, cooking. No, not really. Cheap stuff that you could afford, but I was eating the wrong foods. Certainly not doing the lifestyle pieces, which we should dive into here real briefly. Yeah. About losing the art of being human, because I think it's really, really, really important. And once that pivot happened, I've been nonstop ever since. So I hate to think of what Derek would look like if I never had that moment. How would I feel? Would I be a dad? Would I be married? I don't know. Not based on how I felt. And certainly if I felt that bad when I was in my 20s, I certainly would be a disaster 30 years later or 25 years later.
Well, yeah, the chronic pain issue alone. I mean, just like feeling like
inflammation, right? The body's natural response to anything. I don't care if you stub your toe.
Yeah.
And which hurts like heck. Or, you have inflammation in the gut, but it affects everything. It affects stress, anxiety, depression. So much of this stuff is related to our gut health. It's insane.
Any kind of pain, right? It just sets this whole downstroke of things that are going on. And you mentioned, a number of them, right? Anxiety, depression. I mean, especially long term. I really have a feeling for, anyone living with chronic pain. It's not fun. Like everyone wants that solution.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Let's get into losing that art of being human. You talk about mastering the morning, mastering the evening. You talk about a consistent day. Let's walk through a few things that we just have to be better about to do this really well.
Okay. So I'll preface it with saying that first, I think it's really important that we all, you know, we're sort of brought up. I call it living in 72 degrees. Maybe it's 70, maybe it's 74. Whatever the number is, it's consistent. House, 72. Car, 72. Office, 72. Gym, 72. Back home, maybe you run in and out of your car. We're living in like artificial light. And the average American spends, you know, well over 3/4 of their life. It's actually closer to, 80% of their life indoors. And it doesn't matter. Like, let's say you have like a friend who's like Muslim and someone who's an atheist. And, I grew up in a big Christian family, which big believer. And everyone has different beliefs. That's fine. Good for you, where you came from and who you are. No one's going to argue the fact that human beings were designed to be outside. I don't care if you think we've been on this planet for 2,500 years or 2.5 million years. No one's going to argue the fact. And we've gotten away from it. So that is a big part of losing, the art of being human. And it's just sad, right? And but most people don't think about that, right? The most free, life-changing thing in the world is sunlight. Direct or indirect, you get sun. You actually absorb sun clearly through your eyes. We can talk about sunglasses. Directly through your ears. I actually have these on my desk. We got time. I'll show them to you. This is like generation 1. This thing's 10 years old. It still works. It's called a human charger. It's got these little lights. And when people are in the sun, you put it in your ears. And it shoots light into your ears to fake that you're in the sun.
Wow.
Super cool. So my clients...
And it's 10 years old.
Yeah, this one's like almost 10 years old. They have a bunch of them. It's called a human charger.
It's crazy because I was just reading, like 2 days ago, I was just reading about the absolute crap of sunscreen. What is it? Oxybenzone or what's the...
Well, yeah, and they've gotten better, right? And we'll come back to... I'll pivot for 10 seconds and we'll come back to the loss of the art of being human and then the things you need to do. When anyone who's had a child listening to this, when they were a baby, you went, sunscreen on my baby? We're like reading the ingredients, like, what the hell is in this, right? They're very, very important. But as we get older, it's lotion, it's the different things that we're putting on our body, right? That aren't regulated. They can do whatever they want. And although it's getting more popular with things like Skin Deep and from ewg.org is a great website. Again, no affiliation. Where you can actually download Skin Deep, and there's a bunch of new ones that have come out where it'll give you a rating. You just scan the barcode or QR code that they have now, and it'll tell you like the rating of what's in it.
Yeah,
but yeah, the stuff that we're putting on our skin. So, but sun is not bad. Yeah. Sun is like life, and your circadian rhythm is dictated, especially your sleep is dictated based on the sunlight that you get in the morning. Before about 10:30, 11, if we use general terms. And even if you're standing under an umbrella and you don't have sunglasses on, you're still absorbing the sun. You want to get direct sunlight if possible, just as little as 15 minutes. It's so important. I always say movement, hydration, right? We're mostly water. Everyone knows that. Everyone wakes up dehydrated, even if hopefully they slept 7-8 hours. Closer to 8. If you don't hydrate, you don't move, and you don't get sunlight every morning, you're in trouble. You can do almost all three at the same time. And I love my espresso, right? But it's always after.
Yeah.
So it's darker because of the time change, which hopefully they get rid of at some point. And it's lighter now because of the time change or whatever. And I love having a dog because it takes me outside in the morning. I barefoot, ground, dog's doing its thing. I'm finishing my water and my lemon and my greens. That's my routine, and I'm just moving. And then I have a roller.
So the AM, you've got mastering the AM. You've got light. You've got grounding. You've got outside walking.
Yeah, it could be walking. I have some people where it's cold in the mornings. They live in Chicago.
Yeah,
they literally for like 2 minutes jump on the rebounder.
Yep,
2 minutes, and then they drink their water. and then they go to their coffee, right? I mean, it's in grounding. Yeah, I threw that in there. I'm actually standing on a ground or sitting on a grounding mat right now. But if you can ground, great. I wouldn't put that as a non-negotiable, but boy, will it change your life.
Okay.
But if you most people don't hydrate before they dehydrate. They wake up dehydrated. Every human's dehydrated when you wake up. No one's like, I feel so hydrated. No one does says that ever. Right? Especially if they drink caffeine or had alcohol the night before, then you're really dehydrated.
Yeah.
So hydration, water is the essential. Room temperature is best. The secret, which is from Ayurvedic medicine, is lemon with salt, like Celtic sea salt. There's too many artificial fake Himalayan salts out there. So I just tell people to go with Celtic. Just a couple turns of that. Pound that water. Go for a walk. Jump on a rebounder. Just move. Stretch. You could literally sit on your floor and stretch. Or go on a roller like I do, right? I'm not saying you need to, if you can work out, great. But people are like, I don't have a lot of time. Everybody has 5 minutes. You can hydrate, do some form of movement or stretching, get your coffee. And then if you got to be on your phone early in the morning, look at your social media, do your email, take a phone call, do it outside. It's raining. Do it outside covered. You still get it. Even if it's a cloudy day, you get the sun, but you don't get it behind a window. Or when you're driving, if you happen to live in Southern California where the driver's great, roll your window down, get the sun. Ideally in the morning too, without sunglasses.
Okay. Consistent day.
You got to just start your day in doing things that human beings are designed to do. Hydration, movement, and sunlight. No one's going to argue those facts.
Okay. Middle of the day, we lose consistency. How do we mess that up?
Some people are like, well, some days I eat breakfast, some days I don't. And I do agree for most human beings, adults in the United States, breakfast is not the most important meal of the day, but it doesn't mean you can't eat it. It's just the timing. So consistency is, how consistent are you, with the foods that you're eating? Are they healing foods or stealing foods, right? So that's number one and two. And is your timing, like you eat around the same time? Doesn't have to be exact, but people are like, well, sometimes I eat lunch at 11:30 and sometimes I'm busy and then my blood sugar drops and then I feel like shit and then I eat lunch at 3. I'm like, well, that's not consistent.
Yeah.
And it happens to us all, but you can take a protein bar and pick 2 tablespoons of almond butter on it and pound that at 11:30 until you can have lunch at 2. That's consistency because you're in a time window, right? Called time restricted eating. It's actually not intermittent fasting. It drives me crazy, but I'm going to let it go, even though I haven't let it go yet.
Time restricted eating. And you think that, like, what do you think the time that we should restrict our eating pattern? Like 12, 8? How many hours?
There's no reason for most people to be under 12 hours. There's just no reason.
Under 12?
To be less than 12, meaning you stopped eating at 8 and then you're eating at 8 a.m.
Yeah. So you're saying more than that, like when people are going, hey, I've restricted now to 4 hours, so I have a 20-hour fast today. You think that's just popular?
You got to be really careful. You have, especially if you're a female that has an active cycle. There's a really good book called Again, I just think it's a great book called Fast Like a Girl. If you're a female listening to that, read that book. You can't just jump into a classic 16-8. But I'm going to give everyone another clinical pearl. If I was in an elevator and I had to ask, I use the same thing. I've been saying this for years, decades. And I had to find out something about Trent's in the elevator with me. We're riding up 3 floors. I got like 30 seconds. I'd say, Trent, tell me what you do 3 hours before you go to bed. Meaning, what do you consume? Liquid, food, and technology. I want to know what you do 3 hours before you go to bed. That will tell me a lot. Probably more than I need. You can gauge a lot on what people do.
Get all those things in. Those things in 3 hours.
The most important thing in fasting, and I don't know why anyone talks about it. They're like, I do a 16-8. I'm like, okay, but it should be called a 16-8-2 or 16-8-3. Like at least 2.5 hours before you go to bed. Now, if you want to have like a little one of these like ashwagandha, theanine things I'm trying out, or my family's we love pickles. Or you want to have like, some bone broth or something. I'm talking about like energy foods, which are fat and sugar, right? We have to be very careful, but most people are inconsistent during the day. Their blood sugar is very volatile. They tend to be in the red and not eat enough. And then by the time they get to dinner and after dinner, the body's like, yo, I'm high stressed. Blood sugar is all around. I'm feeding the bad bacteria with all these bad foods. Give me more.
Large pizza and a bowl of ice cream.
Yeah, cocktail for some people it's cheesecake, other people it's pizza. Like as long as it's sugar, your body's like, I don't care. Once it's glucose, baby. Just feed me.
So the
So
master of the evening means we gotta cut all those out 2 to 3 hours before we
you
eat.
gotta, it's little things like if you had a heavier lunch. I'm not
Light
a big
dinner.
snacker. I think that snacking is overrated, but I do like afternoon snacks to curb cravings and to decrease caloric consumption at night.
Okay.
And then have a lighter dinner.
Yep.
If you've gotten enough in that was glycemically balanced throughout the day, you're going to feel fine and your body will adjust. It's very important. And then you have to master your evening. So we have mastering your morning, movement, light, sunlight, hydration, consistency throughout the day. Like if you want a breakfast, have it. If you want to start your fast and break your fast at 10 and then eat at 2 and then have dinner at 6 or 7, that's fine. Be consistent. And then if you end up having to have a snack to buy time to have lunch, that's okay. You were consistent. You kept your blood sugar consistent, right? So that's the goal. Keep it simple. And then at night, prep your body for bed. Master it in a way like we do technology. I got kids. It's like my biggest fight in my house. Freaking technology. Even for me, even though I'm pretty strict on myself. I want to set an example for my kids. And so, I eat dinner, but I have days where the kids have sports most of the time and they're coming home at 8:39. A lot of
Hungry.
parents listen to this, but I'm not 12 or 14. So I eat with them before and then they have a second dinner. I'll sit down with them at the dinner table and drink bone broth or have some veggies or, do some, or like I said, pickles. I'll have some kind of a snack sometimes just to sit with them, or mostly I want to be there to listen to them. I don't need to be eating dinner at 9.
Yeah.
But I will if I didn't eat enough during the day. So, and then if you're going to bed, let's say 10:30, you need to be careful of everything you consume after 8. That's not that hard to do. I mean, food is energy. You digest it for several hours. So if you're going to put anything into your body, and you're like, I eat at 9, I go to bed at 10. I go, what do you think the food's doing? Your food is communication, but it's also energy. And if you're dumping all that stuff into your body and you're going from being vertical to horizontal, it's just sitting in your gut. Not going anywhere. And it's confusing. Yeah. It will disrupt your sleep. So, I don't think I don't do an hour before bed for technology. I think that's very hard to do. I think 15 minutes is a good place to start. Yeah. I'm big into these. Look I got these glasses during the day. Yeah. If I work at night or I'm watching the show, I got these. I got the dark glasses, right? All my kids have them. That's a rule. If we're doing it late, you got to
look like Bono.
So, I'll take that as a compliment. And so it's important to block that light. And then what I do, I've really worked on the last 3 or 4 years, my breathing. I just really 2-3 minutes. I focus on my breath work
all day during the day,
just before bed. It's good. It's amazing to do during the day. I'll do one of my Aura Ring little 3 to 5 minute breathing things it has on it, or I'll just do 4 square breathing on my own. And then I have a roller, Trent. I just love since my coach got me into rolling, I just roll out from being my desk sits, my desk stands, but I'm moving. Sitting instead of smoking. I agree with that. And I roll out and just focus on my breath. I'm talking 5 minutes, not 20.
Yeah.
So I'm breathing while I'm rolling on this thing, opening up my back, right? Opening everything up, feeling really calm and relaxed. And then I take 30 minutes before bed, I take my nighttime little cocktail, my supplements, my magnesium and everything. And then kids are going to bed, show's going down, TV's going off. All of our lights are very low in the house. And then I sleep like a baby.
We got to wrap. We're going to wrap this. We're going to bring Derek Johnson back because this is crazy. We got so much to cover.
I told you, be careful. If you get me going, Trent, I'll take 3 hours.
Now you got to be conscious of your time. For everybody, thank you for joining us on the Winners Find a Way show. Derek Johnson, CEO of Derek Johnson Nutrition. You can look this up at djn.health. His website, free 20-minute Zoom discovery for everybody. Winners Find a Way show every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, live on YouTube, our Leadershipity channel, LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live. Check us out there. And then our full episode on Spotify, Apple, iHeart drops every Friday morning. So until next time, we will see you. Winners Find a Way.
Thank you.